The ocean didn't just want him dead, it wanted him consumed. Saltwater stung his lungs, but the real agony was the ozone scent that preceded the thing. A metallic tang that clung to the back of his throat. Something cold and slick brushed against his leg, not with a random drift of seaweed, but with deliberate, probing pressure. The whispers started then. Not in his ears, but inside his skull, a chorus of wet, clicking sounds that formed words he somehow understood. It promised him air, it promised him life, but only if he stopped fighting the inevitable. His muscles locked, not from exhaustion, but from a primal dread that rooted him in place as the water around him grew thick and surreal. This wasn't a predator hunting, this was an ancient hunger, patient and intelligent, offering a choice no human mind was built to make. To be eaten was to be saved. To resist was to drown alone in the dark. The water churned with a sudden, violent crimson bloom. A ragged, unthinkable tear appeared on his leg, flesh parting like wet paper. This is not a tale of fighting back. This is the story of John Riley, and the most horrific choice a person could ever face. He didn't just escape a shark, he had to let it win. To understand the horror, you have to understand the man. Before the ocean claimed him, he was just a man who loved the water. His world was salt air and laughter. Until the day the sea whispered a different truth. John Riley, a 34-year-old carpenter from Galveston, Texas, was the kind of man who'd fix his neighbor's fence without being asked. A father of 2 little girls, his world was built on quiet generosity and simple routines. The air in his workshop grew thick with the scent of sawdust and something else. A faint, metallic tang, like old copper. Then, from the rafters above came a single, wet drip, followed by the soft, unmistakable rasp of something being dragged across the floorboards behind him. His life was built on solid things: wood, family, routine. But John harbored a secret devotion: the open ocean. It was his sanctuary, his private cathedral of water and sky, a place where the familiar scents of sawdust and home were washed away by salt and ozone. Every Sunday, while his family slept, he'd slip into his kayak and paddle 3 miles out into the Gulf. It was just him, the first sliver of sunrise bleeding orange across the horizon, and the deep, profound silence of open water. This was his ritual, his weekly reset, the only true peace he knew. Out there, with only the lap of water against the hull and the cool, damp air on his skin, the world on shore ceased to exist. That October dawn, the lake lay still as polished obsidian. John's yellow kayak cut through the silence, venturing further than ever before. A damp chill seeped through his clothes, carrying the faint scent of decaying vegetation. He pursued the quiet, unaware it was already hunting him. Out there on the water, he felt like a speck against the endless dark. A profound sense of his own smallness washed over him, a quiet dread in the stillness. He had no idea how terrifyingly true that feeling was about to become. The air grew thick, carrying a faint, metallic scent of ozone and deep, cold rot. The shoreline was a distant smudge against the dark, deep blue water. Sound, gentle lapping, John's relaxed breathing. It was time to head back. He stretched, took one last look at the horizon, and that's when he felt the first bump. A jarring thud struck the kayak's hull. Not a wave, but something solid and massive. John's gasp was sharp, his lungs seizing as the boat shuddered. The air grew heavy with the scent of cold, wet rot. Something immense was moving beneath him, its presence a tangible dread in the water. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the oppressive quiet. He forced his gaze over the edge, into the consuming void below. For one suspended moment, there was nothing. A profound, empty stillness. Then the smell of damp stone and ozone crept up to meet him. Then, a shadow, not a fish, a presence. Longer than his kayak, the water around him grew unnaturally cold. A sudden, sharp bite against his skin. A low, resonant hum vibrated through the hull of his boat. A sound felt more than heard. He froze, the scent of ozone and deep, wet decay thickening the air. A massive shadow moved with deliberate, predatory grace beneath the surface. The cold, metallic scent of deep water filled the air. Then, the unmistakable outline resolved into a 14-foot great white. Every muscle in the kayaker's body locked, a primal awareness taking hold. An engine of teeth and muscle prowled the darkness, circling its prey. John froze completely, every muscle locking as a primal dread seized him. The ancient part of his brain screamed a single command: "Don't move!" Around him, the air grew thick with the scent of ozone and something metallic. "Don't draw its attention," he pleaded silently, hoping it would move on. But it remained. The slick sound of a fin cutting through the water echoed in the stillness. Then came a heavier, more deliberate impact against the hull. The kayak lurched violently as the second strike hit. This was no accident. It was a deliberate test. John's mind raced, calculating distances in the suffocating darkness. Shore was too far, and whatever was beneath him was closing in. The radio was in his bag, submerged after the initial impact. He was completely isolated, severed from any possible contact. An absolute, crushing solitude enveloped him. The cold, briny water carried the faint metallic scent of iron. John's face, slick with sweat and seawater, was a mask of raw terror. Then, the water erupted, a deafening splash, the sickening crack of splintering wood, and John screamed tore through the air. But the shark didn't go for John. The creature lunged for the kayak with jaws like industrial machinery, clamping down and shattering the fiberglass into splinters. Instantly, his world dissolved into freezing chaos. Dark water, thrashing limbs, and the overwhelming metallic scent of his own ruptured fuel. The copper iron smell of blood mixed with salt water, thick and suffocating in the sudden void. Panic seized him. A primal dread as cold as the abyss swallowing him whole. John thrashed in the black water, debris swirling around him. A massive, slick shape churned the water just beneath him. The iron scent of the lake mixed with the ozone of impending storm. The rulebook was gone, and with it, any hope of order. He kicked desperately toward a larger piece of wreckage, and that's when he felt it. Not pain, but a low, rumbling vibration that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The sound of the ocean vanished, replaced by an oppressive silence that pressed against his ears. A metallic taste flooded his mouth, the sharp tang of ozone and iron, as if the water itself had turned to blood. Then came the cold. Not the chill of the sea, but a deeper, invasive cold that seeped into his bones and froze the air in his lungs. An immense, crushing pressure clamped down on his right leg. He looked down. The water had become a swirling cloud of crimson. A coppery scent filled his nostrils, the unmistakable smell of iron. A cold, viscous sensation seeped through his pant leg. His breath hitched, caught somewhere between a gasp and a choke. The heavy, damp air pressed in from all sides. For a moment, all sound vanished, replaced by a thick, oppressive silence, broken only by the frantic thrum of his own pulse in his ears. And in the center of that cloud was the shark's head, its black eye rolled back, its jaws locked around his leg from knee to ankle. This was it. The surreal detachment of horror settled over him like a cold, damp shroud. The metallic tang of blood mixed with the saltwater. A primal cocktail that signaled the end. His breath hitched, trapped in his chest as the shark's grip tightened, each tooth a needle of ice sinking deeper. This was how he died. He'd be dragged down into the murky depths, drowned in the frigid blackness, and consumed by what lurked below. His daughters would have no grave to visit, no place to mourn their father. But in that white-hot moment of panic, a cold, insane thought sliced through the terror. A diver's grim joke echoed in his memory. A shark's bite doesn't kill you. It's the shaking, John. It shakes you to rip flesh free, like a dog with a toy. That's when arteries are severed. That's when you bleed out in seconds. And with that memory, the shark began to thrash. And in that moment, John Riley made his choice. The only choice left in him. He stopped fighting. His body went completely limp in the water. John forced his muscles to surrender against every instinct. He didn't try to pry the jaws open. Instead, he let go. He didn't fight the attack. He surrendered to it, letting his leg become an object in the shark's maw rather than a part of him resisting. The predator, disoriented by the sudden lack of struggle, ceased its violent thrashing. The water grew thick with the metallic scent of blood and the cold, heavy pressure of the... In that suspended moment, a primal stillness took hold, broken only by the low, guttural vibrations passing through the water. But the grip tightened, pulling me deeper into the abyss. As I sank, the pressure mounted, an agonizing crush that felt like my very skeleton was being pulverized. Yet, amidst that bone-grinding torment, the violent shaking suddenly ceased. In that awful stillness, only the cold sea of dread remained. I was just cargo, and it was taking me down. Above, the last glimmer of the world I knew grew faint and cold. A sharp, metallic scent of deep water filled my senses as the pressure mounted. Darkness crept in at the edges of my vision, a black tide swallowing consciousness. Down they went, 10 feet down, then 20. The shark's jaws clamped like a vice around his leg, the pressure excruciating yet paradoxically life-saving. Its grip acted as a brutal tourniquet, stemming a fatal bleed. He was being digested alive, enzymes and salt water searing into his flesh. But that same monstrous embrace was the only thing keeping him conscious, keeping him from slipping into the abyss. A metallic tang of blood mixed with the ocean's brine filled his mouth, while the cold, crushing depth pressed in from all sides. Every second was an agony of paradox, consumed, yet sustained by the very creature devouring him. A horrific, symbiotic torture consumed his senses, his vision tunneled, the world collapsing to a pinprick of rusted steel. The metallic scent of blood and saltwater filled his nostrils as his consciousness began to fray. He had seconds left before the darkness took him completely. The metallic scent of his own blood filled the air as the terrible realization dawned. Attacking the shark would trigger the violent convulsions that would doom them both. His fingers trembled against the cold, damp surface of the underwater rock formation. The only path to survival was a horrifying one. He had to turn the weapon on himself. In the muffled silence of the water, a sickening, blunt, sawing sound began. With his final reserves of strength, he wasn't fighting the shark's grip. He was working with it, sawing deliberately at his own leg above the crushing jaws. He wasn't trying to cut himself free. He was helping the predator take what it wanted. With one final desperate pull, John burst free, a plume of dark blood trailing from his leg as he shot upward, away from the descending shadow. The air grew thick with the coppery scent of blood and the damp, earthy smell of the cave. He could feel the cold, sticky wetness spreading down his leg, each frantic kick sending a fresh wave of pain. Then, silence, sterile and quiet, as the scene cuts to a stark, white hospital room. The fishing vessel's crew spotted the crimson stain spreading through the dark water. They hauled John aboard, his skin waxy and gaunt, as if years had been stolen from him in mere hours. A metallic scent clung to the air as the crew realized he lost more than half his blood volume. He stared blankly through the cabin window, his gaze fixed on some distant, unseen point on the horizon. John's right leg wasn't just gone. Severed had been crushed, severed in a brutal, ragged line. Physically, he survived. He learned to walk again, the cold, unyielding prosthetic a constant reminder. He returned to his carpentry, the workshop air thick with the scent of sawdust and old, damp wood. But every adaptation of his tools was a silent testament to what had been taken from him. But the real injury was deeper. How do you live knowing you allowed yourself to be consumed? That your survival depended on surrendering to a nightmare? Sometimes, in my workshop, I'll feel a vibration. A plane thrummed overhead, a truck rattled past, and my body seized completely. It wasn't the remembered agony that paralyzed me now. It was the low, grinding vibration of its jawbone. The sound was a physical pressure, a deep hum that resonated in my own skull. The sound was my own bones cracking. I didn't beat it, I paid a toll. A metallic scent, like ozone and iron, filled the air as the price was exacted. My leg was the price to cross back into the world of the living. He never enters the water, only watches them with an inscrutable expression. So what is survival's true cost? For John Riley, it was a limb and his last shred of peace. The air carries the scent of wet earth and something metallic, like old coins. He didn't win a fight against a monster. He merely survived its attention. He made a bargain with the entity, offering a fragment of his own being in exchange. To his profound horror, it accepted. A cold, metallic scent filled the air as the pact was sealed. The transaction left him hollow, the weight of his sacrifice a constant, chilling presence against his skin. The story ends not with a bang, but with a vast, empty, and unnervingly calm ocean at dawn. The same view John loved, and every time he looks at the ocean, he knows a part of him is still out there, not just lost, but digested, swallowed by the deep. The question that haunts him, and should haunt us, is simple. What would you have done? Could you have made the deal? Could you have let it consume you to survive?